Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 4 of English 2332. I want to talk to you real quickly about your discussion posts, which are going well. A lot of students have picked up on the fact that that first sentence needs to clearly answer the discussion prompt and then explain that, build on that through the next 4 or 5 sentences. That's great. And we aren't having many problems with students going off topic. Um, One of the problems, though, that we are having is that it doesn't appear you're reading the assigned materials, and I'll explain why. I went to some trouble last week to point out that some of the things that I post up are more important than others, and others are less important. One of the things I said is most important for this unit right now is that PowerPoint called The Ancient World, and especially those slides that talk about the tableau and the grid for each culture, Greek, Roman, and Hebrews. And then on the discussion post that asked about the Hebrew culture, I don't think anybody mentioned anything off the grid or off the tableau. There were a lot of just general statements of what the Hebrews are or were, or what culture is, or like that. So going forward, from now on, I'm going to be looking more specifically to see that you've read the assignment, to see that you've read uh, those PowerPoints, those handouts, the links that specifically pertain to the discussion topic. One perfect example of this is how does Hebrew culture, what was Hebrew culture, was the prompt, and of course, the PowerPoint points out that the Hebrew culture was really a theocracy, that their whole culture was based on their religion, based on their relationship with God and their evolving perception of God. And their relationship with God was a one on one relationship, not necessarily a group relationship, but how God spoke to each person and guided and directed, and how they understood God differently. That's the evolving perception of God. So I was looking for more information from the PowerPoint so I could tell you read that. Now, why is that? Well, because that's where I'll be drawing the test questions from. If you want to do well on the test, you've got to really read and study the information that I'm giving you, usually in the form of PowerPoints. And if you can reflect that, if you can bounce that back to me in your discussion posts, then I'll be much more confident that you're reading and understanding that material that I'm giving you. But week 4, we begin a whole new unit. This is the unit on the Greeks. Now, I know I'm playing with the Zoom here, trying to get this right. Uh, Special effects. Ooh, I know technology is wonderful when it works. All right, so week 4, we start the Greeks, which I've already opened up that learning module for you. Um, you're going to want to learn as much as you can about Homer. Problem is, while he is almost always considered one of the greatest writers who's ever lived, we don't really know much about him. His We don't know when he was born. There's a range of about 400 years, from 800 BC to 1200 BC. We have no idea where he was born. Somewhere in the island, somewhere in the region around Greece or Mesopotamia or something like that. And we don't know if it's one person or a bunch of person. There are rumors, there are hearsay, but we really don't know much about him. And a good question is why? Why don't we know about Homer? If he's such a great writer, if he created these great works of lasting literature, how come we don't know anything about the guy or people? Then, of course, the story of the Odyssey. He wrote the Odyssey and the Iliad, um, the story of the Trojan War, and for a long time, people thought it was just all fiction. It's just all great literature. Turns out now it's based on fact. We found buried Archaeologists have found the city of Troy and evidence of a battle in the plain in front of it. So who knows? Maybe the Trojan horse was a historical reality. And who came up with the Trojan horse? The idea? Our friend Odysseus. Odysseus. Now, I also posted a PowerPoint on Athena. She is a major force in this poem. She appears in three guises, both as herself Athena, then as Mentes, and at the very end, a guy named Mentor. But kind of look at her and see what she does and how she impacts the plot of the poem. It really is a fascinating piece of literature about how Odysseus comes home and who he is. If you enjoy the Marvel movies, especially the character Loki, he's the trickster god, and Odysseus is kind of like that. He's the trickster hero. You got to remember that in our culture, a hero is supposed to be straightforward and shoot from the hip and very clear. And in his culture, it was just as much of a character trait of a good thing to be subtle, to be tricky, to deceive your enemies in a clever way. And Odysseus certainly does that. I mean, look at how he comes back into his own castle. When he enters his own castle, he doesn't just walk up to the gates and say, I am home, I'm home. He sneaks in disguised as a beggar. Why a beggar? Good question. Take a good look at Penelope. Tell me what you learned about Penelope. Think about Telemachus, his son. What do we know about Telemachus? Uh, and of course Athena, and then Odysseus himself. And before you get too caught up on Odysseus, it took him 10 years to get home from Troy, but 7 of those years are spent in one place. So yeah, you're going to want to learn about that. But he does have many other exciting adventures, and even though his adventures are more misadventures, there seem to be more bad things happening to him. He tends to find a way to use all those misadventures for his own personal glory, and that's important to him. Then, of course, we get into and then we have the Unit 1 exam on February the 13th, which is a Thursday. And then we start Sappho. The interesting thing about Sappho is she wrote a lot of poetry, but very little of it survives. Um, and it survives in rather unique ways. One place we found some of her writings are inside the wrappings on ancient mummies because it was actively destroyed during the Middle Ages when they thought that it was a sin and medieval life was very religious, and so they actively looked for it in order to destroy it. So there's not much of it left. The question becomes, do we have enough of her poetry left to say, wow, she's a really great poet? Maybe they destroyed all the bad stuff, and the only thing we have left are the good things. Mostly, we have references to her poems. Other authors quote her poems, and I assume they're only quoting the good stuff. So my question to you is, does she deserve to be among the greatest of medieval and pre-medieval ancient Greek poets? Then a play, Oedipus the King. I went ahead and opened the vocabulary and stuff for Greek drama, which is plays, just so you'll have it to look at to get a little bit ahead on in case you want to. And then some Petrarch, and then spring break. When we get back from spring break, we start the Middle Ages. Now, I know what you're saying. You're saying, wow, we're skipping around a lot. Yes, we are. This is a survey course, and so really all we're doing is we're just hitting the high points of literature. If you think of literature as being a field with mountains and valleys, we are just hitting the mountaintops. We're just hitting the really, really good examples of literature. That's why I often begin by saying, wow, this is a great piece of literature, because it is. We're just looking at the really great parts. Um, Anyway, I hope you enjoy reading it. We're only doing books 1 through 8 and 19 through 24. And these books aren't book length, they're just called books. They're just really just a segment of a poem, really just a chapter. And oh, yes, I was going to talk to you about the suitors. Okay, so Odysseus is off fighting this war. And the war's been going on for 10 years, and it's way far away from Ithaca, his hometown, which is both the name of the island and his castle. I think it's also the name of the town. But for a long time, they lose track of him. They don't know where he is or anything about him. They really don't even know if he's alive. And a lot of people are really quick to say, wow, it's been almost 20 years. He's probably dead by now. He's been through a major war, and we know he survived the war, but gosh, there's not much chance of him surviving. His son, wants him to be alive, wants to believe he's alive. His wife, Penelope, really honestly in her heart knows he's alive. Now, having said that, the way she reacts to his reappearance is kind of funny. But some of this stuff is supposed to be funny. Some of the stuff you're supposed to react to with humor and lightheartedness. So anyway, uh, during those last 10 years, you have a group of young men, about 30 or so, who are living in Odysseus's castle, and they are there to court his wife, to seek her hand in marriage, because they are assuming that Odysseus is dead. And so his wife is a widow. She's a queen of the whole island. She can't rule by herself. She has to have a king. And so I'm going to ask for her hand in marriage along with these other 29 guys. Unfortunately, these suitors are young, they're immature, they tend to party a lot, they tend to eat a lot and drink a lot. And of course, being young men of noble birth, they want the best food and drink there is. They want entertainment. They corrupt some of Odysseus's household maids and servants. And Penelope just won't make a call. She won't make a decision because she knows that her husband's still alive, or at least she hopes. So read through the poem carefully. Get, again, with all literature, you want to know who the main characters are. You want to, oh, and I provide alternate spellings on some of the names because if you happen to be reading a different translation, for example, Telemachus is sometimes spelled with a C and sometimes with a K. And so I provided different spellings for you in the handouts and the PowerPoints. But get a good handle on who the main characters are. Don't forget to include Athena. Get a good handle on the plot. Now, I just gave you a very brief summary of the plot. That's not nearly good enough. You want a 2 or 3, 4 page summary of the plot, and then enjoy the play, the poem. I'm sorry, it's a poem. It's an epic poem, which means it's of greater length and of greater importance. It tells a big story. It's a sweeping panorama of adventure and life and love and death. Lots of death. But it's really great, great thing to read, and so I encourage you to get into it and to enjoy it. And then Sappho is just Sappho. I'll let you read her. We'll do another one on her week 6, and then Oedipus the King. Oh, prophecies. Goodness. All right. Y'all have yourselves a good week. I hope you're enjoying today's weather. It's gorgeous outside. I hated to come in, but enjoy yourself. Take your book outside and read for a little bit. And when you have questions, drop me an email.